All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, on the London is Blue podcast. One of your hosts, Dan here. No Nick, no Brandon, but you know what? It's late Sunday evening in the UK. It's midday in the US. And good friend of the pod, Nizaar Kinsella, recently engaged, joins us. Congratulations, Mazel Tov, all the positive things and vibrations your way for a wonderful bit of news. The best bit, maybe, of news that we've heard in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah. I mean, something's got to go your way, right? So, aside from all the work I've been putting in, I managed to have a life outside of it. It just seems unbelievable, doesn't it? With what's going on around Chelsea. But yeah, I've managed to keep my family together, which is great.
Well, yeah, it doesn't seem like Todd and team are trying to be as disruptive as possible in a couple of different areas. It certainly probably adds a little bit of extra stress to how you manage your day-to-day life around weekend updates, midday updates, evening updates. It just seems to be that Todd and team don't really understand time zones.
Yeah, I think so. I think with busy owners, it makes the journalists busier, right? So, we've got very busy owners and, I mean, there's those sort of late nights working that I can imagine they're doing, getting Deliveroo to Cobham training ground, getting some takeaways in and stuff like that. I think it ends up replicating on us because they're so active that, I think that, when I speak to the other journalists as well in the press box, we kind of have the same feeling, the same vibe. We're like, just bags under our eyes and all that kind of stuff. But hey, it's the fun, like you say, trophies and chaos. And it rolls on somehow.
Well, a little bit more of the chaos end of the stick at this moment versus the trophy end, but hopefully by the end of the season, it will be the inverse. And we've got a couple of things we brought Naz on to talk about with us today. Obviously, news that Todd Boehly is getting extremely close to potentially having a new sporting director at Chelsea, a little bit of a familiar face, at least from a recent match at Stamford Bridge. We also have maybe what that would mean for a very, very, maybe even way too early look at what that would mean for the January transfer window post-World Cup. And then the first days of Graham Potter, what are some of the early understandings of how he's taking to the side, what maybe is going on, what the mood is with his appointment, and the behind closed doors event between Brighton and Chelsea, if there's any little bit of nuggets there that we can pry out on Naz or what he's been able to uncover. But let's just get right into it. Todd Boehly, busy few months, been running the club, been chief negotiator for transfers, been doing all of it. But it looks like he's about ready to hand over some of that responsibility to a new sporting director, Christoph Freund, who is the RB Salzburg sporting director, who we just saw at Stamford Bridge this past week. Naz, how did Boehly and team make their way to Freund as the top candidate for this position?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think they've certainly interviewed a lot of people. We've known a lot of the names. Michael Edwards from Liverpool, ex-Liverpool, I should say. He was one of the guys. It turns out he wants like a bit of a break from football. There was Luis Campos, who's the PSG's sort of sporting director, football advisor is his role. Technically, he was considered, he had talks with Chelsea. But again, it looks like he's staying at PSG. He sort of spoke about it. The role at PSG is very casual. Chelsea needs somebody full-time. You've seen how busy they've been. They need a guy who can do that. So, they've gone for the RB Salzburg guy. There was a few other names as well who were in the mix as well. I think I've heard they were interested in the Brentford sporting director, things like that. Christoph Freund, RB Salzburg. It's very interesting because he's running a club that is a multi-club model, which we've talked about, what Todd Boehly's talked about last week in terms of maybe turning Chelsea into that. So, he's got that experience. He's signed great players, Yupa Meccano. He's signed Erling Haaland's the big one, isn't it? And, Naby Keita, the connections with the scouts, great youth team as well. I was there at not just the RB Salzburg Chelsea game. I knew maybe the Liverpool game was getting cancelled. So I was like, let's go to the UEFA Youth League game as well. And I was down there and Christoph Freund was down at Cobham. And when you're at Cobham at these Youth League games, you see a lot more insights than you maybe would at a men's team game. And Freund was talking to a lot of the Chelsea staff around the youth team already. It was very open. They weren't really hiding anything to do with He wasn't trying to pretend that he wasn't in talks with Chelsea or anything like that. It was all very open and honest. So, then you went to, Stamford Bridge, and he sort of admitted the talks on Austrian TV as well. So now we know that he's pretty close and he's going to come into Chelsea. And, what's he going to bring? I mean, he's run, and I've written about this operation, this Red Bull operation. It's one of the most data-driven, impressive scouting network sort of operations that you'll see. The reason that they beat Chelsea and other teams to the top young talent is because they look in places people aren't looking, and they have a way of working that's so impressive. They've got unbelievable training ground, one of the best in the world. They've got incredible data systems. I've interviewed Jesse Marsh actually when he was the Red Bull Salzburg manager a few years ago, and he was telling me how the club won't even sign anyone who's over 23. So they're just so good at recruitment, youth recruitment. And it's turned Red Bull Salzburg into the 5 times Austrian champions. They weren't really a top team before that. And they also supply great players to the RB Leipzig team in Bundesliga. So they're really competitive now, probably the second or third best team in Germany. And everyone buys players from them all the time. I mean, Chelsea tried to sign Josko Gvardiol, and they were interested in Benjamin Sesko, who was very good at Stamford Bridge the other night. So these guys are signing great players from all over Europe. Can you make Chelsea a more advanced operation? I mean, it already is advanced, but this might be the man. And the other thing is, all the best people in football nowadays are somehow alumni of this RB model. You had Ralph Rangnick's a very respected sporting director, okay, bad manager, good sporting director. He's from that system. You've got there's a Genoa sporting director who's very good that I've interviewed as well. He's over there doing great work. He ran Vitesse, and Vitesse were brilliant when he was there, got into the cup final with Armando Broja up front. So, Christoph Freund is part of this, and he understands what good looks like. And I think that when you're spending money on a sporting director, you want somebody in who knows what good work looks like.
So, as maybe if we just take a step back, because I think we hear a lot of terms when, similar to how manager versus coach, sporting director, director of football, technical director, there's multiple terms that sometimes have overlap and sometimes mean completely different things. If we look at it in what Christoph Freund was doing at Salzburg, what did his role as a sporting director encompass there? And then maybe we can kind of talk about what we think Todd and team views sporting director as at Chelsea. Like, how much is that? Like, is it a complete overlap, or are there some minor differences?
Yeah, I think sporting director, the role typically is like you oversee the whole football operation. So yeah, you're everyone's boss basically. You hire and fire the managers technically. You look after the academy. You're manager of the scouting department and the data analysts as well. So they're kind of 2 separate departments. You have video analysts, data analysts, things like that. Computer scientists increasingly are within the setup as well, especially at big clubs. Liverpool have hired some guys out of Google to work on their systems. So you've got you basically run everything, including the medical department as well. So that's part of it. If they're getting less injuries, that's part of the sporting director's success. So his job's to oversee everything. And I think that, Chelsea have been a very unusual model down the years. Marina Granovskaya was a director, not a sporting director, but she did run the football operation. Then she had a technical and performance advisor, Petr Cech, underneath her. And he was sort of running Cobham, like a sort of general manager, not like doing the transfers and stuff, maybe advising, maybe helping, but certainly not running the transfers. And he was just the guy who lubricated the conversations between the board and the football operation, and maybe even the academy to a lesser extent as well. So he was kind of a middleman sort of thing. So, yeah, I mean, the sporting director model at Chelsea moving to is more of a traditional model. If you look at almost all the Premier League clubs, and maybe all the clubs across Europe, they generally have like sporting director. Chelsea have scope to let this role grow as well, because, when Todd Bowley's come in, he's kind of spoke about it at this SALT conference where he wants to turn this Chelsea thing into a multi-club operation. So you could have maybe a sporting director that oversees everything, and then maybe one just for Chelsea, and then one for the satellite clubs that maybe Chelsea will buy. So, this could grow, this could develop. Man United have a sporting director and a deputy sporting director. Chelsea have never really had a sporting director. In the Abramovich era, I guess Frank Arneson maybe in the early days was maybe a possible equivalent, but it's they've not really run in a traditional way, and that's because the owners got involved a lot and things like that. Michael Emenalo was a technical director. He didn't have as much power. But, the role itself, what matters most isn't really the name of the role. It's the club and what the owners ask the people to do. So it's going to be interesting, actually. We know that Chelsea want a multi-club model. We know that they want to be best in class in every area. They're going to invest heavily in the academy, women's team, men's team. So those are the things we know. Those are the basic fundamentals. The sporting director will maybe need to find a way of making it more sophisticated. Chelsea have everything already, but Todd Bowley again at the SALT conference said it wasn't joined up well enough. So that's kind of what the sporting director's here to do. I don't really it will be a bit of a revolution in terms of the multi-club model. Is going to be so interesting how that works, and it'll take maybe 5 to 10 years for Chelsea to really get the benefit of that. Even Man City haven't really had players come through the multi-club model that well, but what it will do is, I think eventually it's going to replace the loan army that's kind of Michael Emenalo's brainchild, and kind of create, this sporting director is going to create a new Chelsea. So there'll be like a Chelsea in the United States, one in Brazil, Portugal and Belgium. Those are like the 4 big places I think they'll be buying clubs in. They've already spoken to Santos, which is one of the biggest teams in Brazil, to try and have a partnership in some way or get part of the club with some equity. But I think what will happen is they'll get smaller clubs, grow them a bit like what Man City have done, and turn those clubs into really sophisticated clubs that sort of emulate the way Chelsea operates. So, yeah, I mean, it's complicated, but, Chelsea is, because it's a huge business. It costs 2.5 billion and it's going to grow. So, the sporting director controls everything in the sporting operation.
So it sounds like, based upon the size and scope of the role and how it grows, and this idea of the multi-club model, I mean, it sounds like that's more of a midterm type of strategy. Like the near term is get Chelsea up and running, get this team very comfortable with running a football club, start to build relationships in maybe the areas that you want to get into, and then over the next few years, look to really enact the multi-club model? Or do you think it could go faster than that?
I think it could go, everything goes really fast with Chelsea at the minute. So, yeah. I mean, for example, like Palermo were just bought by Manchester City. That cost them 11.2 million. Chelsea bought Cesare Casadei from Inter for more money than that. So I'm not saying it's a bad transfer or that Palermo's better value for money, but it just shows you that these transactions, while they're not easy, they're not that expensive. So Chelsea can be aggressive, make them happen. The hard part's actually identifying the clubs that you can buy, because so many are owned by the fans and all this kind of stuff, and maybe are impossible to buy. But when you can find a club you can buy, then it can happen quite quickly. So, I think that they'll try and move that on. Everything's turbocharged. Chelsea can't really wait too long, because they want to spend money. The new financial fair play model that's coming in is not very favorable to Chelsea as it stands. The commercial revenue needs to be increased, to support wages, transfer spending and things like that. And the stadium also needs to be done to support, further investment, competing at the highest level and all that. So Chelsea need to move forward, or else they're going to be overtaken by their rivals. So I do think they'll kind of move this quickly.
And so, as you talked about too, it does seem like this ends a lot of the pursuit of Campos, even in an advisory role, Edwards, maybe Mitchell, all the others that were kind of being touted around. It does feel like this kind of closes the book there. Or do you think that, as you mentioned, maybe a deputy sporting director and sporting director, there still might be, with the ambition of Todd Bowley and team, there still might be roles for individuals of this caliber if the project is enticing to them enough, and if they can define a role that meets what they're looking to do in their next position?
Yeah, I don't think the owners will limit it anyway. I think the owners would happily have as many good people as they can working on the projects and things like that. This is so big for them. I have been told that, it could be that 2 big sporting director types come in and sort of run the operation, but how it works is incredibly complicated. It's got to work. If you are going to hire Christoph Freund, he's got to be happy with what Luis Campos is doing, and vice versa. It can get messy, if that doesn't work. So I think that the way it will work is that they'll get Christoph Freund in. And by the way, Graham Potter's needed to sign off this. He's not the man who decides, but he's got to be happy with it. He's been consulted on this decision. And then Christoph Freund will be consulted on similar decisions moving forward. How does he want his department to look? Does he want a deputy? What areas of Chelsea are deficient maybe from what he wants the club to be? So there will be a lot of changes that's going to be almost guaranteed. And I bet you that loads of Red Bull staff follow him, because that's what Red Bull staff always do across the world. They always bring at least one or two guys with them. So that's kind of how I see it going, is that, yes, there's not a limit on who comes in, but especially if Chelsea grow to a multi-club model. But I do think that Christoph Freund will have to have his say and approve it.
Do you think there's any key individuals, or are you aware of any key individuals who might follow him from Salzburg that are going to be critical to the success of Freund and then, by extension, Chelsea?
Not really. I'm more talking historically, because there was a sporting director I know from RB Leipzig, and he brought a lot of staff with him, and it's because they work in such a unique way with data and things like that. So they might want to implement their own guys, and that's just me kind of using history to kind of colour, what might happen at Chelsea. And
what are the 2 to 3 things that are going to be the top priority for Freund as he embeds into the role? I mean, it seems to me like it's going to be getting ready for January. It's going to be figuring out, intros and exits for a lot of who's going to come in, who's going to go out. And then also, I think your point, figuring out where the deficiencies are and kind of building the hit list for, hey, here's our 5 projects that need to be addressed, and really kind of prioritizing where the club continues to invest.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because Todd Bowley's been doing the role, right? So he already has ideas. It's not like entering into a blank, clean slate. Todd Bowley has his short list of transfer targets. He's been making bids on players who we know about. He wants Romeo Lavia because he bid on him on deadline day. Same with Edson Alvarez and Sangare as well, Ibrahim Sangare from PSV. So we know a central midfielder is the big target, that's for sure. And those players are probably some of the ones they'll be interested in. So he'll have that. He'll be handed a piece of paper basically with the names on it. And then the goalkeepers will be on the list as well. But I guess there's other things as well. The sporting director looks after, the medical department. So you probably want to look at N'Golo Kante's medical reports and think, do we renew his contract or not? And then he'll be involved in the Jorginho decision as well. So those contract negotiations will go on. Those 2 things are very pressing for Chelsea. They got Mason Mount's contract they want to sort out. That's all very early days. There's not really been contract negotiations, even though Reece has signed his deal recently. The goalkeeper situation is very interesting now because Kepa's played 2 in a row. Of course, the one under Graham Potter as well. Mendy's injured, but also Mendy won't sign a contract because he's been offered sort of less money than Kepa Arrizabalaga. So Kepa, as a guy who came in for big money, is on big money as well. And Chelsea are trying not to pay 2 goalkeepers such, number one, huge salaries. And Mendy doesn't want to accept that. You can kind of understand it from Mendy's point of view, but he's also not playing that well. So do you sign another goalkeeper? Do you sign a number 2? Do you sign a number 1? I think that's a massive thing that's being thought about right now at Chelsea as well. So, yeah, you've got these kind of multiple things that need sorting out. So it'll be contracts, it'll be the transfers, which is midfielder and goalkeeper, could you even look at other areas of the club, medical, all that kind of stuff, scouting, data. I mean, Chelsea's already sophisticated, but can you take it to the next level?
Well, we're going to take a real quick break, and then we're going to get into maybe a couple more questions around, as we just were talking about now, a little bit of the early looking forward for what January might bring. But we'll be right back after a quick break from these sponsors who support the show. So thanks to them. All right, now, so you walked us through a couple of questions that Freund and team are going to have to answer, Potter and team are going to have to answer heading into the January transfer window. one of the things that we didn't maybe talk about is some of the additional exits or departures that didn't necessarily get off the ground in the summer window. Obviously, there was a lot of work to do. Players like Ziyech, players like Pulisic, who were rumored often to be looking for opportunities. It seems like that might be another area that, even though you mentioned that midfield and goalkeeper sound to be priorities right now, if the goals continue to not come, that might continue to level up the challenge, or maybe force Chelsea to make an early move for someone like Leao, or potentially if he's now not kind of agreeing to a contract extension with Milan, maybe that's an opportunity there. What would you think about the attack?
Yeah, I think the attack's definitely on the agenda for the next 6 to 12 months. Leao's definitely one they've made an offer for. I think they probably had some encouragement to make that offer to sort of put AC Milan under pressure as well. The contract negotiations going on their end. Who knows which way it will go, but I think Chelsea want to be there, rightly so. But as you said, the problem with Chelsea is that they can't give the minutes to the attackers they've already got, but the attackers are also, a lot of them, not scoring. So, yeah, you need to find solutions for those guys. I think that, it's not a secret that Ziyech and Pulisic would want to leave, under Thomas Tuchel. But, this could all change as well with Graham Potter's influence. So I think he's not had his say yet. I don't think he's given his opinions, and that's going to be really important, how he works with the sporting director. And he's got a great time. What managers do a lot when they enter at this kind of time is that they don't exclude players right away. So everyone has a clean slate. Everyone has a chance to impress. It drives up the level. You see a boost in performances. It's a logical thing to do anyway, to not rule people out. You might find that Hakim Ziyech is your guy, and I think Graham Potter will kind of be open to all those kind of things. So, and also the players as well, they'll be optimistic that they can prove people wrong. I know that, it's not gone the way for these players, but who wouldn't want to play for Chelsea? Who wouldn't want to play and live in London at this great club that can win trophies if things go its way? So, I think that there's a lot of things that could happen. I think also you look at somebody like Trevor Chalobah. Is he going to be happy on the bench for much longer? We know there was a lot of interest in him. Could he leave? I think if it carries on this way, then he'll probably look to leave. What's it going to look like for Armando Broja? It sounds like that Graham Potter really likes him, but he needs to play eventually. And the longer you keep young players on the bench, the more frustrated they get. You can get away with it with older players a little bit, but younger players want to play and develop and get to their, realize their potential.
So maybe talking and transitioning now. So transfer window done, kind of too early days to get into more specifics, but good to hear that like the Freund appointment is going to help kickstart the conversations there. But Graham Potter, it's now 1+ week into his tenure as the head coach of Chelsea. What are some of the early vibes and maybe anecdotes you're hearing from around the club and from people maybe close to Potter or Potter circle about how he's enjoying it, and maybe how the club or the players are kind of getting on? They feel like they got everything that they were advertised.
Yeah, I think so. I think, I guess first off, like Thomas Tuchel left, and I'm not having digs at Thomas Tuchel because I think he's an unbelievable manager, but the dressing room atmosphere was quite low when he left. And, that was one of the things. It was probably like half the dressing room, I would say, from what I've heard from a few different sources, were kind of frustrated. The vibe was, visibly a bit low around the training ground, even in pre-season and coming into this year. So it wasn't just the Todd Bowley relationship with Tuchel. It was the relationship with Tuchel and his players that was also a problem. So yeah, Graham Potter's lifted the mood right away. He's a nice guy. You meet him and he's just so normal, so down to earth, just a normal, decent guy. He's lifted the mood. The sessions initially started very light. Quite playful, a lot of small-sided games. Then, when they were supposed to play Fulham, they arranged a friendly within the home team. So they had like a 11v11 match with a few academy players acting as subs. They played a game together. The sessions have been, pretty light. They only sort of did a tactical session ahead of the Salzburg game to deal with the specific threats. And again, they sort of built to a fake match day to play Brighton at the Amex Stadium. So they've kind of done that kind of with the team. I think that the mission statement has been Graham Potter getting to know his players. So yeah, I mean, it's one thing, Graham Potter knows football, he's a great manager, but you need to really see the players face to face, and you need to also talk to the players. So he's arranged these one-on-one meetings with all the players. So yeah, the players will fly to international duty today, tomorrow, Tuesday, and Graham Potter by now will have met every player. So those meetings will have just been, what do you expect for the season? How is it going? Where do you see a development? This kind of thing. So he's been having these meetings because those meetings are very important. Personal relationships are very important. Graham Potter always says, that players are human beings first. When the Chelsea fans see about 5, 6, 7 of his press conferences, count how many times he says the word human beings. My players are human beings, because that's his approach to management, is that, this is a guy who studies psychology, and he finds that those sort of connections are really important to try and feel what motivates the player. He treats every player differently and individually. So that's kind of his approach. And that's what I think that's what the players have enjoyed. They've been fun sessions, and it's been, really, there's been a lot of jokes around the training ground, and kind of just been a nice atmosphere to walk into for the last few days. So that's kind of, I guess, Graham Potter's first 2 weeks in charge.
And we know, at least from reports, that Chukwuemeka was the goal scorer of a brace at the Amex in this behind closed doors friendly. 7 Premier League games and a couple behind closed door friendlies. So we got to watch some okay Premier League games, but we might have been more interested in getting the footage from that behind closed doors session. Any other tidbits that you've been able to kind of glean from what may have gone on, or who performed, or who maybe impressed?
Yeah, I think Chukwuemeka impressed. Brozier's doing good stuff, apparently. There's also Billy Gilmore's playing against Chelsea, which is quite funny. He's still trying to make his way, and he missed Graham Potter, so maybe had a little word with Graham Potter and got mad at him or something. I don't know. That's just me speculating. That was the kind of match. It was a lot about shape and working out the tactics. It shows you as well that Chelsea have this great relationship with Brighton. So, they've taken some players off each other, 2 and 2, I think. Cucurella and Potter one way, and in the other way, you've got obviously Gilmore and Levi Colwill. So, there's that relationship there. Now it's increased with the coaching staff knowing everybody as well. So, it's quite interesting they did that. And Chelsea have always had a good relationship with Brighton. But, the other things of the match was that, it was just mainly the players that are either not on international duty, or the players that didn't start against RB Salzburg. So you had quite a good senior group. Like Dennis Zakaria would have had some minutes there, try and get some minutes under his belt and learn the system. You'd have Shalabar, who certainly needs minutes at the minute. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff, and it was kind of done very much with data and managing players loads and stuff like that. So that was kind of what the match was for. The result didn't matter, but it's a shame it won't be broadcast. I don't think it will be. Often when Chelsea do these games, they kind of get the other team, or they sign like a document to say, we won't talk about this match. It's like a secret dark match, So, the dark match was won, and we don't know what it means for the future or anything like that, but hey, it can't be bad for Chukwuemeka to get 2 goals in front of the new manager. And he is a goal scorer, and that will be part of his game when he does finally make it or break through at Chelsea.
Maybe just a little bit more from like a speculation standpoint, or thinking about how Potter sets up his teams. Are there any players that you feel like who are going to see individually a bit of a new manager bounce, where they were written off or maybe not in favor under Tuchel, who are going to be maybe not right away, because obviously we just went into an international break, but from Palace forward are potentially going to get more opportunities, or get an opportunity to reintroduce themselves to Chelsea supporters with a little bit of a new lease on playtime?
Well, I think, Phil Chelsea Youth will probably have told you that the academy players will be the ones who might benefit the most. And there's reasons behind that. The reason Todd Bowley switched from Tuchel to Potter was because he wanted a manager that could connect the dots better with the academy. He's done that very well at Brighton. He's done very well with young players. He's done well with Cobham players as well. Tariq Lamptey, excellent. Signing Gilmore. There's also, they tried to sign Livramento as well. Brighton, had that sort of connection, and he wants that so it will be a lot of youth players will get a chance, but also the way Cobham produces players is really suited to Graham Potter's kind of philosophy. When you watch a Brighton game down the years, the unique thing was that Brighton changed tactics all the bloody time during the matches. You're like, right, what are we watching now? And Potter's a master at that. That's what singles him out as a coach. He's very proactive tactically. And for that, you need very versatile players. I know a lot of players played out of position with Tuchel, and it was a point of frustration. And that's going to happen under Potter, but it's going to happen within the match. So you might see for sort of 15 minutes, Mount might play kind of like in a strange position. And I think he'll be one to benefit because I think he can handle that with his technical ability. Reece James as well, although he was doing brilliantly under Tuchel anyway. Gallagher's been struggling. He's a number 8. I think that Potter's more likely to use an 8 than maybe Thomas Tuchel did. He did for parts of the last game. Mount was in an 8 position, which is probably his best position. I think those are going to be the ones who do well. I think Pulisic could do well as well because he's quite versatile. He can play all across the attack. Any position in attack, I think he can play. He can play wing back in theory, although he does hate it, I think. And he's also quite humble to try positions, but I think he wants to feel like he's a goal threat, and I think he wants to feel like he's being helped to succeed, which I don't think he was feeling like under Tuchel. Certainly, if you look at his dad's Twitter feed, you might think that as well. I think that those are some of the players that could benefit. So I'm not ruling out Pulisic, like turning it around at Chelsea, certainly not. I think Mount has been really unusually poor this season, and his best game came under Potter in the last match. So, yeah, those are the players I'm looking at, really. And, that first lineup, though, as well, I wouldn't read too much into that. I think that, he just wanted to get his experienced players on the pitch. And, it was, we'll see a lot of changes, a lot of rotation, and we'll see who steps forward over the coming weeks.
So it's October 1st. It's a match against Crystal Palace. It's a first match back after the national break. And assuming everybody returns healthy, because that's not always a guarantee with an international break in world football, what's one individual who starts that maybe didn't start in Potter's first match that might surprise somebody?
Oh, that's a tough one. You've got to think about the international load. So I don't think we'll see Thiago Silva. I think that, I'd like to see Fofana in. We could see, it was a back three sort of in the last game, but you could see maybe Koulibaly and Fofana working with maybe an Azpilicueta in that game. There's a lot of options. I'm hoping N'Golo Kante can be back. I saw he was out on the training pitch when I went down to the academy game. He's training with the coach. He's doing some pretty dynamic drills. So can they get Kante back over this international break? That's going to be a huge thing. So, N'Golo will get a shot. It's going to be interesting as well. One player I'm a bit worried about is Ben Chilwell. He's going to be there with England over the international break. He needs to do well to get at the World Cup. Can he get in the team as well with Cucurella, a guy he knows well? So, I think we'll see certainly a defender will get the shot to break in. I'm not too concerned at this stage for any players just because that first lineup was, it's like when Thomas Tuchel came in, he played all the most experienced players. Alonso played ahead of Chilwell, things like that. So it felt a bit like that to me, that lineup he picked. So I think that we could see younger players playing, especially because the older players might have been flogged on international duty, tired, and you might want to rotate the team a bit. And hey, Palace is a big game, but they're coming thick and fast every 3 days. You've got to pick and choose when you put people in for this next coming run of games. The Milan games around the corner, things like that, and they're absolutely monstrous games as well, the 2 Milan games. So I think that those are some of the players that I'd suggest might start.
All right, well, we have essentially 2 weeks at this point until Chelsea play again, so we'll have to, I don't know, make sure that we watch the women's team, hopefully win matches and not lose on penalties to Liverpool. But that's going to do us for this episode. Naz, have a wonderful holiday, a break from football. Enjoy your time with yourself and your family, and enjoy being engaged. And we look forward to catching back up with you after the men's team returns.
Yeah, I'm going to be hopefully rested and ready for a brutal period. And I'm going to the World Cup as well. So, it's not going to be a rest for me there, whereas some people might not be following it too closely.
It's your last break from football until
it's my last break until Christmas anyway.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up. Naz, safe travels then. To all of our wonderful listeners, thanks for joining us on this episode. We hope you're doing well and staying safe. And until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.